Shalom to all our many participants. On behalf of the Canadian Friends of Hebrew University, I want to welcome you to our program today. This coming hour is all about very current and developing events in Israel's politics. Being in Israel now, I can share that you can feel the tension in the air. And wherever you go, that's the topic of conversation, whether it is in the local grocery store or on every TV or radio show, which on its own is not a bad sign because it means that when we talk politics, we are not dealing with missiles. So the question is, will the negotiation yield a coalition that would be able to govern the country, or are we falling into another round of national election? And if so, will they generate much different results? For that purpose, to understand more about this complex reality, we invited two guests, our friend and host, Ambassador Ido Aharoni, who serves as Global Distinguished Professor for International Relations at NYU's Faculty of Arts and Science. Ido is a 25-year veteran of Israel's Foreign Service, founder of the Brand Israel program. Our second guest is a talented journalist, Michael Hauser Tov, the chief political correspondent for Haaretz newspaper. A quick note before we begin, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box and our host will do his best to include them in the conversation. Ido, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Dina and Ayala and the rest of the wonderful team at CFHU for producing and facilitating yet another exciting program. You know, for me, this is almost like a family affair because I've met Michael the first time when he was a teenager, when he was 14 years old. I was his high school project. He did an interview with me. We met in some cafe in Tel Aviv, and his father mediated the meeting with us. And then he came to visit with me in New York with his father. And of course, Michael, on top of his own individual qualities, is also the son of our dear friend, former member of the Knesset, Michael Hauser, who was also the chairman of Israel's Parliamentary Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. But Michael is a young maverick in Israeli journalism, and I'm proud to say that I met him early on when he was just starting as a 14-year-old. And I'm so proud of you, Michael, and I'm so happy to have you with us tonight. Welcome. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very, very much. I see you put all the secrets on the table just for the beginning.
Yes. No. Here, you know, this is family. This is a family affair, and you're part of the family. So the first question I would ask Michael, you know, in continuation to what Dina said, what do you think? Is it a done deal? Do we have a new government, or what are the various scenarios?
So first of all, Ido, I want to say thank you once again to Dina, to Ayala, to Rami, of course, to Monet. I remember I met her at Montreal. As you said, we are all family. And now about politics, look, I think this is definitely not a done deal. And this is very important to say, because let's start and say, I know we are recording this virtual conversation. Maybe someone who will see tomorrow will think that I'm an idiot because nothing that I will say today change and switch hands and people are part of this game, and a lot of things happening all time. Right now, I do think that I can say that 65 to 70% that the new government warm 30-35%. There is a name, probably of you ever heard about it, member of the Amina party, and how much is ridiculous, how government now puts on their Neil Olbach's shoulders the coalition, the upcoming coalition based on Knesset members. And as you know, the magic number, they need to find a 61 person to build a coalition. So if this kind of, so it's all collapsed. So yes, right now we have one problem called Nir Orbach, but maybe tomorrow morning there will be another Orbach like this. So it's a real game, and we will know the final answer only, I think, a week from now. I hope so, but not before.
I'd like to remind our friends that the Israeli political system is unique because it is a coalition, it's a parliamentary coalition system, which means that the next coalition, which was announced last night, will be comprised of 8 different political parties, ranging from nationalist all the way to far left. So we've never had, here we have Michael back with us. Hopefully the connection will be better now so that we can all hear you clearly. I was just starting describing what makes the Israeli political system so unique. Michael, you've been covering it. We've been reading you every day. At least I do every day. In fact, in the last several days, I've been reading your updates on an hourly basis. So what makes the Israeli political system so unique as opposed to, let's say, other democratic systems in the Western world?
I think right now, these days, the Israeli political system is quite similar to the United States. And I will tell you why. I think that these days there is only one question at the Israeli politics. This is not about left and right. This is not about settlements and Judean scenario. This is not about Gaza, and this is not about economic. This is about Bibi, about Benjamin Netanyahu. Pro-Bibi, against Bibi. Why America? Why United States? I think this is a very similar situation to what was in the States before this election, before Trump's election, when he lost the election. Because then I think America divided between supporting Trump and against Trump. And I think this is very similar to what's happening right now in Israel. This unique situation creates some very weird coalition, the upcoming coalition, the future coalition, that's based on quite extreme right. I won't say Bennett is extreme right, but he's more right than Benjamin Netanyahu. Central, Yesh Atid, Yair Lapid is the most central Israeli central party. Right party, which is Avigdor Lieberman and Gideon Sa'ar, and Naftali Bennett, of course, as I said, which is a little bit even more right, and the Arabs, which is very weird, very, very unique situation. Basically, there is no any one ideological thing that connects between all those, except one thing, Benjamin Netanyahu. So we call it the pro-Bibi and the against Bibi part. Those are the two parts in Israel, and this is the main question in Israel. So I think that this is the best way to describe the Israeli politics these days. What will happen tomorrow after Benjamin Netanyahu, if he will lost and lose the power? I really don't know. I really don't know what will be the main question about the Israeli politics, but this is very fascinating.
Now, would you say that, when I look at the coverage of what's happening in Israel, in the United States, in Canada, in the UK, one thing is very, very clear. The traditional mainstream media is looking at everything that is happening right now through the prism of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Would you say that they're missing something very, very big? Because according to you, the real issue is, the real divide is, where do you stand on Benjamin Netanyahu and not where do you stand on the Palestinian issue?
That's right. Look, at the last few years, we had, I think, 5 Ministry of Defense, okay? We had Avigdor Lieberman, Benny Gantz right now, Benjamin Netanyahu was the Ministry of Defense. We had
Naftali Bennett was there for a couple of months.
Exactly, and so on and so on. Bogi Elon even was a Minister of Defense, I think 5 or 4 years ago. So we look at Gaza Strip and the Gaza conflict, okay? And looked at those 5 different, completely different Ministry of Defense, different parties, different idea, different ideological, different philosophy. And the situation is exactly the same. It was exactly the same situation when Bogi was the Minister of Defense, when Bennett was the Minister of Defense, and when Netanyahu was the Minister of Defense, and right now. It's exactly the same. So I think that this is not a question anymore because of that. And of course, this is interests the world. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on at the German politics between Chancellor Merkel and the upcoming leader that she have over there next to her. So of course that the internal political will not interest the world, but I do think that the main point that the international community and the media cannot see is that there is no any real solution. There is no any real strategy. There is no any something that you can say that if the power will change in Israel, this will change the whole situation. And I interviewed today for the BBC News in UK, and the anchor asked me the same question. Do you think that if Naftali Bennett will be the prime minister, something will be different in Gaza? And I told him, no, I don't think that even if my grandmother will be the prime minister, something will be different. There is no any real solution here.
Now, that leads me to the big question. All right. So we established, thanks to your analysis, that the defining issue is not where you stand on the Palestinians, but rather where you stand on the performance and the behavior of Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is the $1 million question. In your view, what is it about his behavior that contributed to what seems to be his inevitable ouster by his own allies?
I think there are 2 parts for the answer. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is a very, very, very special person. He have an amazing abilities, speaking abilities. He have an amazing ability to rule the political system. He knows how to make good politics. He knows how to talk. He knows how to make pressure, how to impress people. But I think that the second part of the answer is more interesting. I think Benjamin Netanyahu wouldn't be a Benjamin Netanyahu that we know if he was the prime minister like 20 years ago or something like this. You know, I'm 25 years old, okay? I lived in a world of persons and not in a world of ideas. I live in a world that reality stars, there are the main stars. There are the celebrities walking at the street. People don't really know who is the Ministry of, Energy, but they do know who just won the song competition at Channel 12, the biggest Israeli television channel. And it's all the same all over the world. This is not unique here to Israel. So I do think that my generation, the young generation, believes more and more in persons and less in ideas. And because of this so special and unique character and personality of Benjamin Netanyahu, he succeeded to become such a great politician. This is a time of great politicians. And Benjamin Netanyahu is the most fit person for this period of time. And I think that when you combine those two, you see a leader that stayed in power for the last 13 years, almost 25 years at the political system generally. And this is an amazing process, amazing power. I think he's definitely the greatest politician in Israel. I think there are a lot of bad things to say about Benjamin Netanyahu. I think the situation right now in Israel is very difficult. But about politics, if you talk only about politics, there is no one like Netanyahu.
Now, how do you explain the fact that the people who are most adamant to unseat Netanyahu are people that actually worked very closely with him?
Like my father.
Well, your father actually kind of saved him in the first round, in the previous round. But you look at Avigdor Lieberman, it's the guy who really ushered him into politics, served as his first director general during his first coalition back in May of 1996. Going through Gideon Sa'ar, who served as cabinet secretary under Benjamin Netanyahu. Certainly Naftali Bennett, who was his own chief of staff. And of course, people like your father and others who worked with him. How do you account for that? How do you explain that the closest people to him actually turn against him? What does it say about him and about his management style or lack of management?
First of all, this is the persona. You can like it and you cannot, but this is the persona. He is a persona who don't want to see next to him successful, talented people. He lives in a fear from his own shadow. I think he's the most paranoid person that I ever met. He thinks that every person next to him wants to do something, wants to take from him power and to, I don't know, record his wife or his children, or to do some kind of thing that I even cannot think about, because this is a paranoid person, very, very, very paranoid person. And of course that at the side of all the good things that I said about Netanyahu, this is one of the most terrible thing that his personality is a part of. Because, okay, it doesn't matter. Don't take the politician next to him. Don't talk about Avigdor Lieberman and about Gideon Sa'ar, because they are politicians. You can vote for him and you can vote for someone else. But if you take, let's talk about the current cabinet secretary. Okay, cabinet secretary, this is a very, very important position. I think that the current cabinet secretary is absolutely 100% does not fit to this job. He's just a person who ran some community center from in his own hometown. No any management experience, nothing. He just low-level politician. And Netanyahu took him and put him as a cabinet secretary. You can even take something more serious, the National Security Advisor, which is a talented guy in some way. I think I'm not an expert for a defense issue, but he is a talented guy, and yet he is very, very. He acts like a politician. The National Security Advisor, Meir Ben Shabbat. He acts a lot of times like a politician. I remember it was like, I think 2 or 3 years ago, 2019, I think, when the Knesset almost Avigdor Lieberman decided to quit from the coalition, and then Naftali Bennett took if he will do it or not. And the thing that Netanyahu did to keep the government and to avoid from another election, which he didn't want to go through, was to send the advisor, the security advisor, Meir Ben Shabbat, to Rabbi Druckman. Rabbi Druckman is one of the most important rabbi at the Naftali Bennett party. It's called Habayit HaYehudi. Right now, his party called Yamina. It was at those time Habayit HaYehudi. And then the National Security Advisor told to the rabbi of this Naftali Bennett and this party that he cannot quit the government and the coalition because of a security reason. Why the hell the National Security Advisor goes to this rabbi and talking about politics? Because this is a part of Netanyahu. Netanyahu keep looking for this kind of persons. They can be talented or untalented, but he wants them to be a loyalty. This is the first thing that he looks at people before he take them to any position.
Right. You know, in one of our previous sessions, we mentioned the great work of Gerald Post. Gerald Post was a psychiatrist working for the CIA in charge of compiling the profiles, the psychological profiles of leaders for the American president. And unfortunately, he died a few months ago of COVID-19 at the age of 86. But Gerald Post wrote a wonderful book called Politics and Narcissism, Dreams of Glory, in which he claims that in order for people to survive in the current high-intensity political environment, media environment, politicians have to have three personality traits. They have to be narcissistic, they have to be compulsive, and they have to be paranoid. And I think that your description of Netanyahu's behavior certainly answers, meets that criteria. And we also remember the story that happened in the 1990s when Netanyahu went on television, national TV, admitting to having an affair with a woman, claiming that the affair was recorded, and there's a videotape somewhere recorded by his political rivals, and of course there was never a tape, and he just went on national television embarrassing himself and his wife. And who knows, maybe that's where the seeds of this whole paranoia were planted. Let me ask you another very, very important question that is on the mind of every person on this call. Let's assume, and you said it's a 65, 70% probability there's going to be a new coalition, again, comprised of 8 different political parties ranging from all the way from the right to the left. What do you think is going to be the main agenda of this new coalition, assuming it's going to happen and Naftali Bennett will serve first as prime minister in rotation?
Bibi is going to be the main agenda. I know it sounds weird, okay? But the main goal of this kind of coalition is just to survive. Of course, all of the parts know that they will not be able to act or to process or to trying to make a law in any conversational issue or any extreme steps that they will want to take. Of course, that they only wants to survive and to finish those 4 years in power. And the only thing that connect all those 7 parties, is Benjamin Netanyahu, as we said. This is the only thing that can connect between the Arabs and Naftali Bennett. So I think that everything will be based on Bibi in some way. Even anti-Bibi coalition is kind of a Bibi coalition without Bibi. I think that if I will be one of the party leaders, I will pray that Benjamin Netanyahu will stay the head of the opposition for very, very, very long time. Because at the minute that he wants, probably this coalition will fail. Probably we will go to an election because there will no any reason why should they stay together, because there will not be any agenda. There will not be any major steps that they will be able to take. So I think surviving, just, to make sure that everything's working kind of well, they have to pass a budget law, because the last budget law that passed, it was almost 3 years ago. So for 2 years, we ruling without any real budget. So they will have to pass the budget law. They will have to do some kind of things that just didn't done in the last 2 years because of the crazy political situation. But there will no any extreme or any specific agenda except this one.
And this is the time to mention to our viewers that in Israel, the budget, which is the tool, the allocation tool that allows the government to actually govern, is passed as a law every year. There's a budget bill, there's a budget law, and the Israeli government, actually the previous coalition, dissolved because of the inability, in fact, because of the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu actually retracted on his signed agreement in which he committed to pass a biannual budget. He failed to do so intentionally, and I think that this is one of the reasons he was not able to form a 61 coalition. Also, it should be mentioned that all public opinion surveys indicate that the Israeli public is concerned with the chaos. And it's not necessarily related to COVID-19. But Michael, I have a question for you. To what extent do you think COVID-19 contributed to the sense of chaos, of lack of governance, of dysfunction that you feel? This is the sentiment in among Israelis these days. Where do you see the correlation between the performance of the government on the issue of COVID-19 and what's happening today in the political system?
So first of all, the COVID-19 crisis here in Israel was quite short because these days, thanks God, everything is quite normal. We have even parties in a closed clubs, underground closed clubs, and everything's working quite regular. We don't even use masks anymore. So I do think that there is very, very big one point about COVID and about the political crisis that combine together. And this is about trust, about how much do you trust on your government. Because of the crazy political situation here in Israel, a lot of people lost their trust on government. And then before every kind of new strict that they try to pass, any kind of limits that they try to pass, there was a very, very major debate here in Israel. Does it based on politics reason or healthcare reasons? A lot of people think that the Ministry of Health wanted to cancel all the demonstrations in Israel. And there were a lot of demonstrations against Netanyahu at these times. And a lot of people thought that the Ministry of Health, which came from the Likud party, acts based on political reasons. And there is a sense, it makes sense to cancel demonstrations. I mean, the COVID virus does not make any difference if you are at demonstrations, if you are just sitting at the office or you walking at the mall. I don't know. So there is a reason why to cancel the demonstrations and why to limit them. But people couldn't believe to the government that this is based on a real health reasons and not a political reasons because of this kind of crisis. Right now, these days, when everything is under control, I think this is not the main issue here anymore. But definitely 6 months ago, yeah.
Well, then the question is, if the coalition is going to basically, the new coalition is going to basically be preoccupied with its own survival, and you indicated, and I tend to agree with you, that if they will deal with anything, it will be budget, infrastructure, some upkeep, as we say. What is the longevity? What is the expected life expectancy of this coalition, in your view?
I really, really, really don't know. It can be days and it can be 4 years. The dynamics between all those partners will be a very, very, very big question for the first days of the upcoming coalition, of course, if it will be. This is a very, very interesting question. You need to remember Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid, the two main persons, were political friends, actually, or they were personally and politically friends and allies, and they worked together very well. So this is a very big question if they will be able to make the same things like they did 5 years ago when they worked together, even a little bit more, 9 years ago, when they worked together very, very well at this kind of a coalition. If they will, and they will respect each other political agendas and political limits on this kind of weird coalition, I do believe that there is a good chance that this government will finish all the days. I mean, for full years. But if all kind of Knesset members and political leaders will want to, do some political, something that's very important to them, but very inconvenient to the rest of the partners. This will finish at the next few days after the government will swarm. So this is the very, very, very big question about this kind of coalition, and I really, really don't know the answer.
Now, whether this coalition will live its full term or not, one thing for sure, they made history by including for the first time in Israel's history an Arab party, which means an Arab party will be part of the coalition. It will receive an operational portfolio, will receive a piece of the budget pie, and will become for the first time an operational partner in the governance of the State of Israel. How significant is it in your view?
I think this is a huge risk and a huge significance, and I tell you why. I think that the chairman of Ra'am party, which is the Islamic Arab party, this is the party of the coalition, made a huge steps looking forward for Jewish, Muslim or Arab cooperation, political and civilian partnership. And if this if it will succeed, so of course this will be a very, very important thing and the huge steps that the Arab political leaders and the Arab society did on the Israeli major parts and the regular people society here. But if it's failed at the end of the day and the government will not, and the coalition and the government will not swarm, and it's failed, so I think that the next time that we have another chance like this to cooperate, to work with our politician will be very, very, very difficult, and it will take a lot of time before there will be another political Jewish and Arab leaders with this kind of courage to do kind of steps like this. So
now
this,
please go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I say this is a very, very big question. I think if Abbas will succeed, so this will be a magnificent thing, a very, very important thing about all the Arabs people who lives here in Israel. But if he will fail, this is a huge, huge, huge risk for any cooperation between Arab leaders, political leaders, and Israeli Jewish political leaders.
Two last questions before we open the floor for the questions from the audience, and I'd like to urge our friends to send your questions through the Q&A function, and then Dina will screen them for us. The first question is, what would be the impact on the ultra-Orthodox parties that are going to find themselves for the first time in many, many years outside of the executive branch, with no access to budgets, with no access to allocation, with no access to political power? Will they be tempted to join the coalition at one point or another? What do you think is going to be the impact on the ultra-Orthodox? And the second question is, what do you think is going to happen in Likud? There are some talks about Likud disintegrating. There's some calls within Likud already calling for replacing Benjamin Netanyahu. There are challengers from within Likud. So two questions before we open the floor. What is the impact on the ultra-Orthodox? Will they join the coalition? What is the impact on Likud? Is Likud going to keep intact?
I think those two questions have two answers based on the same point. This is only about time. How long this coalition will survive? If the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, will see that this coalition working quite well and they have the first good month and second good month and third good month, I do believe that at the end of the day, it will take few months. Definitely, it won't happen tomorrow, and not even in a week, in 2 weeks, and in 4 weeks. But at the end of the day, after a few months in this kind of coalition, I do believe that at the end of the day, they will join the coalition. Why? Because of money, of course, because of budgets. This is very, very important to them. The last 20, 25 years, based the Hasidis, the ultra-orthodox way of life at the last 20, 25 years, based on this kind of political situation that includes a lot of money that goes to their communities and their authorities. So I cannot try to think about any situation that they will continue to keep sitting at the opposition and won't take part of this budget that they have the chance to take. And because of that, I do think that at the end of the day, they will join this kind of a coalition if it will survive something between 3 to 6 to 9, I don't know, months. About the Likud, this is quite the same. Nothing will happen at the next few weeks and months. A lot of people wants to be the next Likud leader. There is one called Nir Barkat. There is one called Israel Katz. There is one called Miri Regev. They are all wants to be a Likud, the next Likud leaders. This is not going to happen at the next few weeks and months. Only if the Likud will see that this kind of coalition survive and they're doing well, and this chances that Benjamin Netanyahu will be back in office at the future, at the close future, at the next few months, is zero. Only in this kind of a situation, they will try to find someone else, and to kick them out of the party and from the seat of the chairman of the Likud. So
because it's important for our listeners to understand, there are, in this current Knesset, out of 120 members, there are 65 members who belong to what we call right of center political parties. In other words, if Netanyahu was to step down voluntarily, like Ehud Olmert did, there could have been a Likud-led government quite easily, and it could have been a stable government. In other words, Netanyahu is the only thing that stands between Likud and another Likud-led coalition.
Exactly.
And that's a source of great frustration within Likud. Now, we have some very, very interesting questions from the audience for you. Aaron Oshry is asking if you can give us an update and your assessment about where the Netanyahu trials are heading. And let us remind our viewers, he's being accused of three things. He's being accused of bribery in the case of Bezek, of intent to bribery in the case of Yediot Achronot, and he's being accused of receiving illegal gifts. So those three cases are being right now discussed in court. What is your assessment? What's going to happen in your view?
I think that the chance that the trial against Benjamin Netanyahu will end at the next few months is zero. It's going to take something like, I would say, between 3 to 4 years till the trial will end. Only at the Bet HaMishpat HaMechozi. This is the second court at the Israeli system, and after this we have the Supreme Court, and of course Netanyahu will go to the Supreme Court as well. So after these I believe 3 or 4 years, it will take another 1 or 2 years. So at the end of the day, I do believe that the Netanyahu legal issue will finish only in 6 more years from now. These days at the court, they hearing only the first testimony of the first person who have to make the start of the trial, and this is taking a lot of times. So kind of for 6 years, 4 to 6.
So this is what you're predicting is basically a very lengthy legal process with an appeal, assuming he will be convicted. That's a highly unusual scenario because if you remember, the Ehud Olmert trial was actually pretty swift. David Rosner is asking if the fact that there's a new Arab political party as part of the coalition, is it going to help Israel's international standing? And as I said in my opening remarks, from what I could tell, the international media doesn't really care about that. They don't see the significance. The only thing they see is that Naftali Bennett, in the language of the New York Times, is an ultra nationalist, and all they see is the twinning between Israel and the Palestinians, and they just don't consider Israel beyond the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So the question to you is, do you see this having any impact on Israel's international standing, the fact that we now have an Arab party as part of the governing coalition?
I think it's up to you, you all guys. I mean, I live here. The media that the television news program that I see, this is an Israeli news, and I don't looking CNN to take the daily updates. You know, it's better than I. And this is really up to you. I mean, I do think that this is a tool, and this can make any change. This is very unique situation that there is an Arab Islamical party inside of the coalition. If people, clever and smart people like you all over abroad will know how to use it, and if people here in the Israeli government and the Israeli Foreign Affairs Office will know how to use it, so yeah, definitely, why not?
Now, Aaron Levitt is asking a very, very good question. Do you see a situation where this new coalition will, for whatever reason, will disband, will dissolve, will not be able to handle the pressure because of the fact it's so eclectic and it's not really, doesn't really have a lot of common ground to work with? Do you foresee a situation where actually Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be recalled again by the political parties to come and save the country, very much like de Gaulle did with France?
So technically, it's quite difficult. In this kind of system, the Israeli system, we cannot just hold to someone to save the situation, to save the country, and ask him to back to the prime minister office. Maybe if it's all will going very bad, and the upcoming coalition will not function as well as it should be, Netanyahu and the Likud will get much more votes at the next election. Maybe the process, this kind of process, and this kind of trying to put someone else at the prime minister office, and if it will be a bad if it will not going very well, so maybe Benjamin Netanyahu will join the situation and will take more votes that he would get in a regular situation. But this is not as technically as as you said, the question that we will just call him to come back to the prime minister office. There is no any process like this. Maybe you will get more votes.
Now, you may be too young to remember, but I'm sure you know this chapter in Israel's history when Menachem Begin, who was a very dominant and present leader, abruptly retired. He left a note that says, "I can't take it anymore." And he sunk into a deep depression that ultimately led to his death. He was replaced by the very non-charismatic Speaker of the House, Yitzhak Shamir, became prime minister. Perhaps the least likely successor to Menachem Begin was Yitzhak Shamir. And yet, I remember very clearly 6 months into his premiership, he got 70% approval rating from the Israeli public. Do you think the same thing could happen with Naftali Bennett? Does he have it? Does he have the same characteristics? Do you think he has what it takes to be a strong and popular prime minister?
we all want quiet. We all want to having 2 weeks without to think about our prime minister. This is some sentence that I know that some journalists in the United States said about Trump and Biden. So yes, we do want some quiet. We do want some person that we don't have such a extreme feelings about him. I don't know if Naftali Bennett is this kind of person because he have a charisma. He is quite talented, smart, young, very well speaker, and he know how to play with the politics. So I don't know if he will be some kind of character like this, but generally, if you ask me, if some quiet personality, someone that everyone can love or everyone can live with, if he will make a good job and people will vote for him, yeah, I do think that Israel looking for some quiet, peaceful person to run the politics.
Now, Michael, something very, very unusual happening here. We have a Knesset with a clear right of center majority that is basically ousting its own natural leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. Who are the heroes of this incredible upset? Who are the heroes? Yair Lapid, Gideon Sa'ar, is Naftali Bennett the hero? Who is the main hero of this incredible scenario unfolding in front of our eyes?
I think, first of all, Avigdor Lieberman. Avigdor Lieberman, at the first election season here 2 years ago, the right parties got 65 seats at the Knesset, a big majority. And the only one who decided that he will not join the coalition, and because of that, Israel will go to second election, is Avigdor Lieberman. He was strong and strong enough and he had enough courage to make this kind of step, which is very, very unique and even a little bit weird stuff. And he is one of the main reasons why we came to this day without Benjamin Netanyahu, maybe at the prime minister office at the next few days. The second one is, of course, Yair Lapid, which run all this kind of system or run all this story at the last 1 month and create this political atmosphere and this political situation that allowed everything happen. So I do believe that those are the most important character at this story. And of course, Netanyahu himself that create Gideon Sa'ar that hates him, and Avigdor Lieberman that hates him, and Yair Lapid that hates him, and all this kind of weird situation.
I should also mention to our listeners that we've never had a prime minister in Israel's history that retired peacefully. And one of the reasons is because there are no term limits. So one sadly was assassinated, one died of a heart attack, one had a brain aneurysm, one sunk into clinical depression, several were defeated, one ended up in jail. And no one really retired peacefully because there is no term limits. And Daniel Granot is asking you, do you think it is feasible and viable that this Knesset will pass a law that if you are being accused of criminal, if there are any criminal accusations against you, you cannot serve as a prime minister and you need to defend yourself as a private citizen?
No, I don't think so. Because the Naftali Bennett and Yamina party said a lot of times that they don't want to make such a step like this, which seems like to be a very, very anti-Netanyahu step. And because of that, I don't believe that this will happen this time. But I do believe that in the future, after all Netanyahu's story will end, it will happen because a lot of people from all parties understood how bad it is that you have a prime minister who sitting at the cabinet during the nights and at the court house during the days. This is a very, very bad situation. And I do sure that in one of the days, they will change the law, not this time.
Now we have two last questions before we wrap up, and thank you for your time and your attention and your brilliance, Michael. The first question comes from Manette Malevsky. She's asking, given the difficulties on foreign policy issues, especially the Palestinian issue, what are the chances this government will be able to make a difference on social issues such as housing, education, infrastructure, and health?
So, Monet, I do believe that this government maybe have the highest chances. Why? Because the chance to make any major security step or any major, I don't know, economical step is very, very low, because so many different agenda cannot find any one solution. So when you don't look for any grand plans about security or economic or I don't know what, you can focus on the smaller, it's not really small, this is much more important, but kind of the smaller issues like education, like healthcare, like a lot of things that must be deal with here in Israel, and we didn't really pay attention to this kind of subjects during those years, all the last years, because of the crazy atmosphere here in Israel, and because of all the reasons of the security, of the economics, and goes on and goes on. So definitely.
Last question is coming from Moira Sachs, who's asking that a question that I also would be very happy to answer. Assuming Bennett completes successfully his first 2 years, what are the chances he will hand over the premiership to Yair Lapid?
So this is funny. My editor just asked me to write a piece on this specific question. They both said that the first and the most important thing is trust and friendship. Those two persons trust on each other, and they says that this is the most important thing in this kind of a government. There will be any technical system that says that if Naftali Bennett will be the responsible for the government collapsing, so Yair Lapid will get the seat for a few months or something like this. They still work on it. So I don't have the full answer, but you will be able to read the full answer, I think, next week, because my editor really wants this article, this piece. So I will find the full answer when it will be done.
Yeah, if I may contribute my own opinion, is that it's really about how the politician is viewing his or her own political brand. And I think Naftali Bennett's brand is all about being decent. It's all about doing the right thing. It's all about giving and not taking. And so I believe that whatever's going to happen, Naftali Bennett will do his best to live up to the agreement that he signed, because this is his political brand. And again, remember, we had only one instance in our political history where rotation government actually was executed. Shimon Peres was the prime minister from 84 to 86. And from 86 to 88, he handed over the premiership to Yitzhak Shamir. Yitzhak Shamir was very concerned that Shimon Peres will not do it, will not live up to the agreement. But Shimon Peres, again, being aware of his own political brand, of his own place in history. And by the way, if I may add, one of the reasons it was the right wing that brought down Benjamin Netanyahu is because of what Benjamin Netanyahu did to the whole establishment of political decency. The fact that he reneged on his agreement with Benny Gantz was not viewed favorably by many people that vote for right-wing parties. And I think that the fact that he basically deteriorated, really, the stature of politics in Israel will probably be the only thing people remember about him. If he wanted to be remembered as the Israeli Ronald Reagan, sadly, he will be remembered as the Israeli Richard Nixon. Last question. Martin Buchwald is asking, how do you think this government will handle the issue of Iran? Does it have even the capacity or the stamina to deal with the issue of Iran? And we'll end with that question.
I think that this is a very good question because we need to take a look not only about the prime minister, about few more people, about the head of the Mossad. He had a major part with all connect to Iran, and now we have a new head of Mossad. So I don't know how he will act about this major point. And of course, the Minister of Defense and a lot of people. But basically, I do believe that most of the prime ministers, the optional prime ministers in Israel, will act pretty much the same. Of course, Netanyahu did it, I think, very well because of his international power and his opening doors at the White House and the past White House. And even right now, he's a very, he's a famous character that have the White House number to connect with. So I think that basically it will be the same policy. Maybe it will look a little bit different because the name recognition of Benjamin Netanyahu versus the name recognition of Naftali Bennett, which is completely different.
Yeah, and again, Naftali Bennett has done something that is incredible. From an impossible position, he managed to rise to the top job, and we all wish him success. His success is our success, and we would like to thank you, Michael, for your time.
Only a year and a half ago, he even didn't get into the Knesset. He didn't get enough vote to get into the Knesset, and right now he's maybe gonna be prime minister. Amazing.
Right. A politician that could not even pass the parliamentary threshold only 18 months ago is now on the verge of making history and becoming the first Orthodox prime minister of the state of Israel. There were many prime ministers who had a strong connection to Orthodoxy. David Ben-Gurion, for example, was a great scholar of the Bible, perhaps better than most rabbis. But he was not a practicing observant Jew. This is the first time we have a prime minister who's an observant practicing Jew. I know Menachem Begin was observing the Sabbath, but he was not wearing a yarmulke. In any event, Michael, thank you for enriching us with great deal of information, assessment, opinion, and anecdotes. You are brilliant. Haaretz and its readers are lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you. Until the next time, goodbye from Jerusalem to all of you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.